What's going on, guys? Jake Boley with BarBend.com. So today we're going to be doing a slightly different shoe video. We're going to be talking about the why behind the Converse Chucks. A lot of people wonder, why would you want to lift in those? Aren't those just like a shoe that you wear around with a normal outfit on the day-to-day? Yes and no. So these are great for lifting for a couple reasons, and in this video we're going to dive into those specific reasons, and then we're going to lightly touch on a review portion, kind of talking about what goes into this shoe, the pros, cons, and how they perform in the gym. I've competed in these shoes a couple times in powerlifting, so I have a pretty good idea how they perform and what you're going to be able to get out of them. So now let's talk about the why. Alright, so why the heck would you lift in Converse Chucks? If you're a powerlifter, you're probably sitting thinking, dummy, I already know the answer. But if you're newer to squats and deadlifts, you may not. So let me cover 3 reasons why the Converse Chucks are great for lifting. First, there's a flat sole, so there's no elevated heel. Some people prefer to squat in heeled shoes, and that's completely fine, and it depends on how you like to squat and your lifting mechanics. But for a lot of folks, a flat sole is going to serve them a little bit better, and especially better than something like a tennis shoe that has a rubber outsole. So when you're squatting weight and you're putting weight into the heel, the forefoot, and everything else, and trying to really grip that floor, the last thing you want is a rubber outsole. It's going to squish and absorb too much force and kind of shift your weight and possibly cause your torso to collapse. So having a flat outsole helps you maintain mechanics a little bit better and helps you maintain your positioning through the squat. Another reason why the Converse Chuck is great is because on top of the flat outsole, the outsole is pretty hard, so it's a pretty flat and pretty firm surface. There's nothing that's really compressing into it, and honestly, if you really want to, you can actually take out the outsole and put in a thinner one, and you're going to really have a firm base. You're going to be pretty much resisting any kind of compression or shifting of the body weight or collapse of the shoe itself, so there's not going to be much of a medial dip, so if your knees aren't going to go valgus and stuff like that in the squat, and you could really work on gripping the floor. And that leads us to our third reason, which is with the flatter mechanics of this shoe, we are really able to grip the floor and maintain that tripod foot position. So a tripod foot position is contact with the heel, the medial, and the lateral side of the metatarsal base. So you can really grip that floor in squats and deadlifts, which if you're deadlifting, you really want to grip and push through the floor, and same with the squat coming out of the hole and maintaining your position on the eccentric. And the Converse is great for doing so. They come in a lot of different varieties, which you can kind of pick and choose what you like best for your mechanics. But those are the 3 main reasons why the Converse Chucks are often used in deadlift, squat settings, and kind of just an all-around gym shoe if you prefer it over your normal sneaker. Alright, so now that we've talked about the why behind the Converse Chucks, let's take a quick walk down memory lane and look at the Converse Chucks history. So back in 1908, the company was founded by a man named Marquise Mills Converse. Since then, the shoe has remained relatively consistent and has very few changes, and that's really rare in the shoe industry, especially when you know companies are constantly releasing their models, they're upping their shoe tech, they're dropping new updates, stuff like that. So to have a shoe that remains relatively consistent has built a big following. So if you're a Converse All-Star fan, you probably love the shoe, and it's because that it's consistent. You know exactly what you're getting. It's a decently priced model, and it's going to be very consistent with your day-to-day wear or if you're working out. So back in 2003, Converse became a subsidiary of Nike, and while the shoe has remained relatively consistent, Nike did put a little bit of their spin on the model. They changed the insole, which we'll talk about in the construction portion. But all in all, the shoe has remained relatively consistent. That update that Nike gave it was back in 2015, and that made headlines. So you probably actually saw that in the news if you're a fan of Converse. So now let's talk about the construction that goes into Converse, and then we're going to talk about the pros, cons, price that come along with this model. Alright, so now let's take a quick look at the construction of the Converse All-Stars, or Chucks as they're normally referred to. So we'll work from the toe to the heel. Up here on the toe, we have a consistent midsole that wraps without. We have a little bit of an extra rubber material here, as you can see. It kind of comes off the midsole. It's not really any kind of benefit in terms of performance of the shoe. It's more for durability, in my opinion. It kind of adds that extra layer of material, so if you're consistently walking and dragging the toe, it's not peeling off. We have a toe cap up here. It's a little bit firmer. It's more of like a leather material, and then, or a rubber material for that matter. And then we work to the midfoot. So we have 7 eyelets that run up. I use all the eyelets to lace. Some people like 6, but I like 7. It really comes down to personal preference, but it's plenty for stability either way. 6 is a little bit too loose on my end in terms of ankle flexion. Working to the midfoot's midsole, consistent throughout. There's double stitching here going up the cloth base of the shoe, so the outer construction is like this kind of clothy cotton blend. Working our way to the tongue. It's a little bit of a longer tongue, and that was part of the update that these shoes got back in 2015. Working our way to the heel. This is the low cut model. I'll show you exactly how low when we do the sizing portion in the next clip, but it's a lower cut build, double stitching throughout here. We have an additional piece of material back here with double stitching as well. The midsole wraps evenly all the way around the shoe, so as I pointed out in the toe and the midfoot, it's the same on the heel. It's gonna come down here to a vulcanized rubber outsole, and so that's very popular in shoes for durability because vulcanized rubber is typically more elastic, durable, and it's gonna be able to withstand a lot more wear and tear. And that's something that has kind of grown with the Converse, and it's something that's made this model so dang popular is how it's so simple and so durable. So working our way to the final feature, and this is something that was changed about the model back in 2015 when it got its updates and it made its headlines, is that it received a different insole than what was previously in the previous model. So this is a Nike Lunar Lawn insole, and it's basically a little bit more padded than what was previously in the Converse Chucks. This has received very mixed feedback between the Converse hardcore fans for that matter. Basically, people really liked the shoe that was consistent, that had a shorter tongue and a little bit of a firmer insole. This adds a little bit more of a comfortable build, so if you really like having that firm base, you can totally switch this insole out for a different insole depending on the size you buy, so just make sure you look for that insole that correlates with the size. And then the final thing we'll talk about is this final piece of material on the tongue here. It's worth noting, I don't really use it, and it came with the update back in 2015 as well, and it's one of the things that Nike has added to the shoe. So if you like using this on the midfoot, you can. I don't personally use it, as you can see. It doesn't really add any effect in my mind. So all in all, those are the construction features that come along with the shoe. Now let's talk about the sizings. In all of our lifting shoe reviews, whether it's a cross trainer or weightlifting shoe, I wear size 10. And honestly, my 10 size foot is really true to size, and I always make sure to make that a point. In Converse, they recommend going a size down. And in my opinion, I actually go a full size down because I really like the shoe to fit tighter. I only wear these to work out. I barely wear them on a day-to-day basis. So keep that in mind with that recommendation. If you go a half size down to your normal size, you're gonna be very safe with this model. It's gonna fit fine, but the shoes do run big. And if you want an even tighter fit, then I would say go down a full size. I'm gonna show you guys exactly how this 9 fits on my size 10 foot. So let's put it on. One thing I will give you guys a quick tip about too is that don't be like me and try to rush putting your shoes on sometimes and not fully unlace them and try to just pull them from the heel. I have some rip here, and that's purely because of me being kind of a dummy and rushing putting the shoe on while it's still too tight. Fully loosen it up every time, especially if you use the 7 eyelets. That's gonna save you some durability of the boot of the shoe. So now let's lace up the shoe, give you guys an idea of how it fits. So it's a size 9, so it's gonna be naturally a little bit tighter on my 10 foot. And I know that going into it. So again, if you are not looking for the tightest fit, then go a half size down. That's gonna be your best bet. These shoes do run big, so if you go normal size, they may feel a little bit big and may feel kind of clown-footed. So working through the fit of the shoe here. We have a pretty firm fit throughout the midsole, and if I splay my toes up here to grip, I can do so pretty easily, even though this is a full size down than what I'm normally wearing. I can spread my toes and I don't feel really limited. Up here on the toe itself, my toe is right about here, about maybe a half inch, maybe a little bit under towards the end here. And honestly, if I wore these all day, every day, I would get very uncomfortable because it is tighter, and I know that going into it. So keep that in mind when looking into this model. There is enough room up here to give me a comfort through a workout, and I have enough to really grip the floor and really spread my toes. That's not a worry. It's just kind of the toe jamming from excessive walking, or if you're wearing them every day, if you're going a full size down. So all in all, my recommendations for you are to look at a half size down from what you're normally wearing. If you want a tighter fit, you might be safe going a full size down. I like having a shoe that fits a little bit tighter on the foot, and that way it doesn't look so big and like kind of blocky feeling or almost clown-like. So all in all, my thoughts on the model sizing of the Converse Chucks. All right, so now let's talk about the performance of the Converse Chucks. So in the why section, I mentioned why a lot of people love to lift in them, myself included. So now let's talk about the actual performance of the shoe. So 2 things to really note about this. So the flat outsole helps you maintain your torso positioning in the squat. And that's especially true for people like myself who squat low bar with longer legs. I have a slightly wider stance, so any kind of heel really makes me look like a folding chair when trying to move weight, especially since that bar is sitting lower on my back. The Converse All-Star allow me to maintain a little bit more of a vertical shin, which helps me kind of maintain a more upright posture, even though I do have a little bit of a chest dip since I am squatting low bar. And the second thoughts on the performance of this shoe are on the deadlift. So this shoe is an amazing shoe for deadlifts because the outsole is very resistant to compression, and also since it's flat, I can kind of maintain more of a vertical shin angle. So when I pull conventional, I want to have a slightly more vertical shin compared to if I had a lifting shoe and it's going to dip me forward. That's going to allow me to really work my mechanics and really pull with a proper hip hinge, as opposed to if I had too much heel, pulling with a little bit too much of an excessive flexion and not really being able to use my posterior chain to pull weight. So all in all, those are my performance thoughts on the model. If you're looking for a shoe that's going to be consistent, that allows you to grip the floor really well, that has a hard outsole, the Converse Chucks are going to be a good option for you. All right, so now let's talk price at the Converse Chucks, one of my favorite parts of the shoe. So for one of the low-cut shoes, you can expect to pay around like $45 to $50. In terms of shoes that you're gonna wear in the gym, I think that's pretty competitively priced. Plus these shoes are gonna last you for, I would say, safely at least a year, especially depending on how long you're wearing them. If you're only wearing them in the gym, definitely a little bit longer. So if you're gonna get the high tops, they're gonna be slightly more expensive, but again, for $45 to $50 for a low top shoe, I think that's pretty fair. So a few things I like about the Converse Chucks is that, number one, the flat outsole. It helps me maintain a more vertical shin in deadlifting and squatting. And if you're somebody who needs that, that's a great feature of the shoe. Number two is the outsole. It's a little bit more firm and it isn't very easily compressible under heavy weight. That's a huge perk for any kind of powerlifter or someone who doesn't want any kind of possible knee valgus or any kind of ankle stability when squatting or deadlifting or doing other lifts. And then my final pro with the shoe is that it's pretty competitively priced. So at a price of around like $45 to $50 for a low cut model, that's really great. And honestly, if you're wearing them on a day-to-day, that's really, really great because you're now paying not so much for a shoe you can wear in the gym and outside the gym. And it's probably gonna last you, I would say, safely at least a year if you take good care of them. Again, I made some notes on the durability of making the boot last, which I have not done such a great job at, but all in all, those are my three pros that come along with the Converse Chucks. All right, two cons that I would be worrisome with the shoe if you're new to the Converse Chucks is number one is that it's not the most comfortable shoe. Now it is comfortable to wear on a day-to-day basis, but if you're looking for maximal comfort with a rubber outsole and like a nice big foam padded insole, this isn't the best bet for you. It is a flatter model, it's a little bit more firm, so if you're wearing them for long walks or anything else in between, they might not be the most comfortable to adjust to, especially if you've never worn them. Number two, and this is a big thing I want you guys all to pay attention to, especially if you've never bought a pair of Converse Chucks, is the sizing portion. I would reiterate that if you're buying a pair for your first time, rewatching the sizing portion, these shoes are incredibly big fitting, so they do need to size down, whether it's a full size or a half size. That's going to come down to personal preference, but I would definitely recommend if you're looking and you're pretty true to size normally, don't go true to size. It's going to feel a little bit big and you're probably going to have to return them, or they might just look a little bit more like clown shoes, as I like to say. So all in all, those are my two cons. They're two things that are going to be very subjective to the user themselves. They're not the most comfortable and you got to really pay attention to the sizing, but the shoe is good, and those are two things that you can play by ear and also kind of adjust to. That wraps up my thoughts on the why behind the Converse Chucks and why it's such a dang great lifting shoe. We've also talked a little bit about the shoe itself in terms of construction, pros, cons, and price. So if you're new to the Converse Chucks, hopefully I was able to help out. My biggest takeaway is pay attention to the sizing of this model. And if you're interested in other shoes outside of the Converse Chucks, and let's say you want more of like a cross-training shoe or something with a little bit more versatility to it, be sure to check out our best cross-training shoe roundup, which we recently put up, and Google BarBend best cross-training shoes.